Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV. Today is our interview show where we bring someone on to the show for them to share their vast amount of knowledge and experience for our listeners and viewers. Today's no exception. My name is Craig Mason, and as always I have with me Jeremy Stratton. Say hello to everyone, please, Jeremy.
Hi everyone, hope you're having a great Wednesday.
Excellent. So today's interviewee is a gentleman by the name of Brett Jarman. So Brett is the CEO and founder of a business called Help Me Leverage. He's the executive producer of the Experts on Air podcast network, author of the best-selling book Soul Operator, How to Be Your Own Boss and Build a Business with Purpose. He's also a host of the Authority Accelerator podcast and the co-host of the Business Connections podcast. So if you're into your podcasts, you may have heard Brett before. Brett has been self-employed or freelancing since he was 19 years old, having owned and operated several businesses throughout that time. He has literally helped hundreds of others through his consulting, coaching, and copywriting businesses over the years. He shows founder-based business owners, and this goes to his business at the moment, which is Help Me Leverage, how to leverage their expertise and build a business that can thrive with or without them. So we obviously welcome Brett to the Business Legal Lifecycle podcast. Now, Jeremy, what are the top three takeaways that our listeners or viewers are going to get from the interview with Brett?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So Brett's a really interesting and fun guy. You'll get that from the interview. We talk about what leverage actually is, and we go through a bit of an explanation about what leverage is and how to actually do it. So as always, I get from our guests some practicals. The first thing is what leverage is. The second one is some practicals of what you can do today to start leveraging yourself as a business owner. And also the third thing that I thought was really interesting was Brett's view on the future of leverage and the future of business. He's got some really good and interesting ideas. So, I think this is a really good interview. And if you've got any questions, as always, feel free to ask us and we can pass those on to Brett and get him to answer them as well. So I hope you enjoy my interview with Brett Jarman. Welcome, Brett, to a Business Legal Lifecycle podcast and our TV show.
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So, Brett, we went through in the intro a bit about your history, and we talked about the fact that you've been operating businesses since you were 19 years old. So do you want to tell us a bit about your history, give a bit more depth to that?
Yeah, for sure. There's probably more width than depth, to be honest. So when I was shortly after I left school, I had a passion for the theatre, and most of my early work history was in the film and television industry.
Okay.
So a little bit of a stint in theatre, but film and TV that was back in the 80s when film and TV was just booming in New Zealand, where I grew up, and also here in Australia, where obviously I migrated to eventually. So I spent about 16 years in that game, mostly in the lighting side of things. So I was what's called a gaffer.
Yep.
I wonder what a gaffer is, where the dudes who basically were responsible for running the lighting department. But in the process, because it was freelance, I also had opportunities to do other things, which I did. So I bought a car cleaning franchise. My wife and I, when we moved to New Zealand for a bit, we were running a little manufacturing business there. We were promoting events there as well. But then shortly after the children were born, they just weren't that compatible with the film industry.
Yeah.
So I let that go because the hours are incredibly long, and you go away for months on end. So it just didn't work for me. So I gave up on that, and I ended up, that was just literally around when the internet was becoming a useful thing.
Yep.
And everyone was having computers on their desks. So I became an office type person. So I was consulting, doing a lot of communications work. And then a lot of my work was around copywriting.
Okay.
And that's pretty much been the focus of what I've done since then. I do a lot of coaching But that coaching work came out of the copywriting work because of the questions that I was asking people in the copywriting field about their business. I ended up coaching them more often than anything. So,
Yep.
yeah, as I say, a lot of width. And to be honest, now I'm working on the depth. Now I'm kind of, with the current projects we're working on, I can see me playing a long game with this.
Good.
And
Yep.
building an asset out of it.
Yeah. Well, I've learned something new. I've always actually wondered, and I've never got around to Googling what a gaffer actually does. So you've taught me something new today. So thank you for that.
Here we go. Originally, when I first met my wife, she actually looked it up in the dictionary, and the original meaning of it was a leader of old men.
Ah.
So in the UK, the gaffer would be like the head of a department, but somehow the film industry hijacked the term.
Yep. And that's the definition I always knew from one of my favorite books is Lord of the Rings, and they talk about the old gaffer being, I think it's Sam's father, and so that's where I knew it from, but I didn't know what it actually meant.
Well, funnily enough, the Lord of the Rings was the last film I worked on. It was back in, I think it was either 98 or 99.
Excellent.
That was when I handed my tools in. We were working in Wellington. My family was in New Zealand. I said, I'm done. Finish it without me. They did a great job.
We could speak for hours about Lord of the Rings, but we won't go there.
That's right.
That's not why people are listening to us today. Like currently at the moment, like so many of us, you're doing a number of different roles. So why did you move into the businesses that you're doing at the moment? So what was the reason and the passion behind that?
Well, it all kind of happened by accident. I guess as I've already mentioned, the common theme in what I was doing was the copywriting. Like I love playing with words. I love wordplay.
Yep.
And in a business context, there's so much you can do with it. And so where we've found ourselves now, like we're carving our niche with Help Me Leverage, everything revolves around authority marketing, and it's all about how we position business owners in their marketplace, and just trying to be clever with words in terms of how they present themselves, how they get people to understand who they are, what they can do for them, and so on.
Yep.
And so that's kind of the core of what we're doing, but there's so much that revolves around it that I can bring experience to.
Great. And so you've had a lot of experience with a lot of different industries. So how do you think that's helped you now with what you're doing?
Well, in some ways, like a lot of the experience is totally irrelevant. So, for example, owning a car cleaning franchise has no relevance to what I'm doing now, and the manufacturing business we had, there's nothing to that. But what I think I bring to the table is a knowledge of the experience of the stages of business.
Yep.
That's what I've kind of, and I wouldn't say I've been through them all, but by any means, like I'm no Richard Branson, but I understand, like especially the startup stage for people who are bootstrapping a business. I know that stage like the back of my hand, and I know the emotional journey you go through. I know the struggle you go through in terms of working out, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? And all that sort of fear and doubt that comes into it, that's kind of second nature to me now. And so the people that I'm working with, I would say 80% of it is practical work and 20% of it is kind of coaching and almost counselling.
Yeah.
So when they're saying, like for example, overcoming imposter syndrome, that's a big thing, especially when it comes to authority marketing and putting yourself out there as an expert. Every client we've got, they sort of, oh no, I've got nothing to say and I'm not really an expert. And so counselling them through that, I've been through it myself and I'm going through it myself. So that's I think is the real skill that I bring in. It's just knowing the stages of the journey that's common to everyone.
And that's so important, isn't it? That, you start a business. I remember I started my business, it's 7 years ago now, and I thought I knew everything and quickly learned that I didn't. And I think you need to know that you need to learn. You need to know that there are different skill sets that you need, and that you got to get that knowledge. So I think what you've said there is very important for people to understand that, just because you might be in a completely different industry, running a business is very, very similar, isn't it, across different industries? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move into the topic of leverage. So, as we talked about in the intro, and you've mentioned a couple of times, one of the things that you help do, or your clients do, is to leverage their business. And one of the things, reading through your book and a few of the other resources that I read of yours, especially LinkedIn and all the rest, is the wealth equation. Can you talk a bit about what that means and how that applies to leverage?
Yeah, totally. I'd love to take credit for the wealth equation, but it doesn't belong to me. It belongs to a guy called Roger Hamilton, who I know you're aware of. I don't know if he invented it, but he certainly he promotes it. It's his term really, and what he says is that wealth equals value times leverage, and it's the order is quite specific. It's not leverage times value; it's value times leverage. So you've got to establish your value in whatever it is that you're doing in any field, like whether you're an actor, a singer, a lawyer, a copywriter, anything. You've got to establish your value first before you leverage it. And so most people, they focus too much on the value side of things, and that kind of traps them. They end up hitting an income ceiling.
Yep.
That kind of limits themselves. And so as entrepreneurs, we kind of, you can distinguish an entrepreneur from someone who's not an entrepreneur is they're more excited by the leverage side than by the value side. And often they'll actually make the mistake of trying to jump straight to leverage before they've established value. And I see that happen time and time again. You kind of got to pull their skates on and say, look, just be patient. Forget all the stories of overnight success you've heard on the internet.
Yep. Be
patient, and wealth will come to you eventually.
Yeah, and Roger Hamilton, yeah, I am aware of him, and he's a very smart dude. He knows lots of good information. He's got lots of cool ideas. So, do you want to explain to the listeners exactly what they can do to leverage? So, what we're looking for here, we always like to give practical tips to our listeners about what they can actually do. So what can they do to leverage their business?
Yeah, so probably the universal principles that I would apply, Jeremy, like in specific businesses, like I could look at your business and there would be specific tips that I could go through with you. Yep. But the principles I think are the same. And the first thing is to ask who instead of how. Okay. So instead of thinking, how am I going to get this done? Your question ought to be, who can I get to do this? Yep. And probably the master of that is Richard Branson. Anytime someone comes to him with a project, or if he has an idea himself, he never doesn't even trouble himself with how it would get done. It's like, who would I get to do that? If I talk to Jeremy Stratton, then he get that project underway for me and run it. Like he is the king of leverage. Yep. So that's probably the most the overarching principle.
Yep.
Then the next thing would be to delegate outcomes instead of tasks. And that's something that I've learned probably more so in recent years.
Okay.
I've been, I wouldn't say guilty of it. It's just a process that everyone goes through. I've got too bogged down in the weeds. I know that's a term that you would have heard many times.
Oh, yeah.
You get bogged down in the weeds explaining to someone how to do something. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really empower them.
Yes.
And often they don't actually know why they're doing something. If you're just saying, do this, 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 and this, they just end up being robots. So I'm now learning, and it has released me enormously to do this with my team. I just describe what the outcome is I want and set them free to do it. I get them to come back to me and tell me what resources do you think you need for that.
Yep.
And then let them go to it. It's enormously liberating to do that.
And how do you find? Do they come and ask you questions, and how do you deal with that? So if you're all guilty, and I'll say that I've been guilty as well of being being task focused, not outcome focused. How do you then deal with them coming back to ask you questions that you want them to find out the answers themselves?
Well, I kind of expect the questions. Like if they're not asking questions, either A, you've underestimated what the capabilities are, or B, you've explained it so well that they don't need to. But and this is another thing I've learned probably in recent years, is when they ask a question, I challenge myself and I challenge them, should they actually know the answer already? And often I won't actually answer the question. I'll say, well, you tell me, or where would you go to find that answer? What are the options? Tell me the three options.
Yep.
So more and more and I had an incident today that was exactly that. I just basically sent the question back to one of my team and said, I'll be interested to hear what the answer is to that.
Yeah.
Let me know when you come up with it.
Yeah, I think that's a great technique because it empowers them to actually learn how to learn rather than just be spoon-fed by us as the leader in that scenario. So I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And they do find it a little bit, I wouldn't say off-putting, but it kind of takes them off guard a little bit to start with. But now they're kind of used to it.
Mm.
And and sometimes they even realise that they're just asking the question to use me as a sounding board.
Yep.
And they either know the answer or they were close to getting the answer anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah. So did you have any more to that? I kind of interrupted you there, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I did. The other thing, and it all kind of fits in with this principle, is do your best to make yourself redundant.
Yeah.
As business owners and founders, and I'm coming across this more and more, we like to think of ourselves as special.
Yep.
And no one else can do things the way I can, which is quite right. No one else can do things the way I can, but it doesn't necessarily need to be done the way I would do it. It just needs to be done. And it doesn't necessarily have to be done as good as I would do it. It just needs to be done. So, so it's, that's where you get most of the liberation and leverage.
Yeah, and I love that one because as a lawyer, we're perfectionists. Yeah, that's our industry. We're trained to be perfectionists. And I see time and time again lawyers failing to leverage because they haven't been willing to let go and accept that their team might make a mistake or two. And we're trained that, and that's the way that we're trained. And I know that a lot of other professions are trained the same way. So I love that one. Yeah, I often think if they can do it 80% as well as you can, then that's probably good enough.
Yeah. It's a pretty standard formula, and even 78% as good as you can.
That's right.
Sometimes we want things too good.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's just not leverage.
That's right. And I love what you said at the beginning of your answer about, and David Dugan, who we both know, he uses the term become a whoer. So who can you solve this? Who can solve? And I really like that one because it's for me, again, as a control freak lawyer, you've got to take the step back. And I know that a lot of people listen to this show are lawyers and in that industry, and you need to take a step back. Otherwise, you're going to be doing the job of a lawyer for the rest of your life, aren't you?
Yeah. And to be fair to the lawyers and the accountants, there's a lot at stake in your industry. So I can kind of understand perfectionism. Yeah. But at the same time, there are thousands of others who have gone through the same learning curve as you. So make use of their knowledge.
Yeah. And to be clear, I wasn't, and I know you weren't saying this, but I wasn't being critical. I was just saying, if you want to leverage your business, if that's something that you want to do, then that's why this is one of the reasons I want to have you on here to go through that process, because if you want to do it, then you need to take these steps. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's many ways to be right, but you don't know what you don't know, and people need to know that. So anything else on that about the important aspects of leverage?
No, I think those are the overarching principles. Like if you apply those, then you'll be fine.
Yep. And my next question we've kind of gone through already, but the next question was, what holds most business owners back from being able to leverage?
Well, so it's that thing of being special, and I guess this is one point I would add to your previous answer. The way I kind of sell that to our clients is, look, at the moment you're special within your business. Our role through authority marketing is to make you special outside of your business.
Yep.
So they don't lose that sense of pride that comes with what got them to where they are, but they actually use it as a marketing tool rather than as an operational tool.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that actually becomes more fun for them because it raises their reputation and the business kind of follows on in their wake.
Yep. Excellent. Well, let's talk a little about authority marketing. You've mentioned it a few times. And so that, I think, I wanted to talk about the tools that people can use to leverage their business. And you mentioned authority marketing a few times. So can you explain to people exactly what that is and maybe give some practicals about how they can actually do that?
For sure. So the actual tool that you use authority marketing for is your knowledge, your intellectual property. For a lot of people, it's I describe it as being trapped. They're using it at an operational level. But if you release it and basically, I don't want to say show off, but if you display your expertise to the market, that becomes a huge attractor for your business. And most of your listeners will be familiar with the term content marketing. It's been pretty big ever since blogs came out. That kind of changed the landscape of marketing forever. And it gave people avenues to show, hey, this is how this is what I know about the industry. This is how you can be helped, so on and so forth. So that's become the absolute sort of primary marketing tool for most businesses. The distinction between content marketing and authority marketing, and this is a made-up distinction, but I've not found anyone that disagrees with it yet. Authority marketing is all about the person. Content marketing is all about the brand. And why we do that is, number one, it's more interesting for us. It's more fun. And number two is people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And the key word in there was that second word, people. They don't do, they gravitate towards Jeremy before they gravitate towards Jeremy's business.
That's right.
And so by promoting the person and making them the authority, elevating their status, as I mentioned earlier, that they become the attractive factor in the business, and the business succeeds as a consequence of their popularity.
Yep.
So the actual tools, the in a practical sense, most of the people that we deal with, they're high value professionals, lawyers, accountants, other consultants who are earning 6 and sometimes 7 figures a year, and so it's not the best use of their time to be sitting down writing blogs.
Yep.
What we also find is that that they are best at giving their knowledge when they're talking.
Yep.
Number one, because it flows out of them easier, and number two, because it comes out in their voice. And so almost by mistake, we've ended up using podcasts as our primary medium.
Yep.
We produce podcasts for our clients. And it's not so much for the podcast itself, although we get great benefits from that. It's for the cascade of content that we're able to leverage out of that.
Yep.
So out of a podcast, we'll write a blog post. Could be anywhere between 1,000, 2,000 words. Sometimes we may even get 2 or 3 blog posts out of it.
Yep.
We'll create 3 or 4 LinkedIn posts, between 10 and 15 tweets, 3 or 4 Facebook posts, and then we use that content, and we're out there. Firstly, we're publishing it, but also we're repeating that content.
Yes.
On a frequent basis. So whereas in the past they might have spent, say, an hour and a half, 2 hours writing a blog post, they'll post it on LinkedIn, they'll stick it on Facebook, maybe do a tweet, and then that's it. The content doesn't get heard about anymore. Whereas in that same hour to an hour and a half, we could get them to record 3, 4, or even 5 podcast episodes. They sit back and let us do the work. And then there's this content that's constantly out there working. And what it does is it earns Einstein, one of his, I think he called it the 8th wonder of the world or something. He said, I think the 8th wonder of the world is compound interest. And doing it the way that we do, you actually earn compound interest on people becoming interested in what you've written. And over time, Google sits up and takes notice because you're being regular with the content.
Yep.
And then other people sort of follow on from Google. And because you're regularly on the social media platforms, the people in your marketplace, they're just seeing you all the time.
Yep.
And you benefit there from what's called the mere exposure effect. Someone in a white coat invented that term. And what that means is even if I've seen Jeremy's posts on LinkedIn and Facebook, if I've never read them, just the fact that I've seen them, I've seen his name, and I can see that he's a lawyer. In the back of my brain, I'm building up some favoritism towards you.
Yep.
Very powerful effect. So that in a nutshell is how it works.
Yep. And on that, one of the things I thought was very interesting, something that I don't do enough of, and that's repeating the content.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about why it's important to repeat the content? Well,
number one, because it's there. So for example, let's say you write a blog post about conveyancing.
Yep.
Some conveyancing tips for when you're selling a house.
Yep.
Those tips, they're going to be relevant now. They're going to be relevant in 6 months, 12 months, probably 2 years. Even if there's a law change, you could go through and update that post and put a new date on it. But whoever gets exposed to that post now, they're probably going to forget about it in 3 or 4 months' time. And 99% of the people who see it, it's probably not relevant to them at the moment anyway, because they're not buying or selling a house. But if they see it again in 4 months or 6 months, or someone else sees it in 6 months, you're increasing your strike rate. Basically, marketing is all about being on someone's radar. And if you just come on and you're a blip on their radar and you're gone again, they're not going to see you unless they come looking for you.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of all the marketing platforms we've got available to us now. You can get high levels of exposure.
Yeah.
Look at television. there's a reason why McDonald's, ANZ Bank, all of these large companies, they're advertising every single day because they know they've got to be in front of people as much as they can.
Yep.
And we can do that for almost zero cost now.
Mm.
So, again, it's just another way of leveraging your content, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think, and it's an excellent point. I don't do it enough, and I think you've inspired me to make sure I get that done more often, because I think we've got so much content. Yeah, this is show 152 of our podcast. We've got so much content out of it, as you and I have talked about before. So we need to get out there and do it, because make sure we're leveraging it a lot more. I think that's
absolutely, and you can automate it as well, Jeremy.
Yes, absolutely.
There are tools that will fill gaps in your social media schedule.
That's right. Yeah,
you don't even have to lift a finger.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great, and I think that's a really good way of actually doing it. And I love the authority marketing piece personally, because I think, as you said, it sets you up as that authority. And these days, if that's what you want from life, if you want to be a thought leader or authority, a person of authority in your industry, you need to position yourself for that. And authority marketing does that. In space, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, and just on that, Jeremy, we talked a little bit about imposter syndrome earlier. A lot of people, they actually have resistance to being a thought leader. Yeah. So I would say, if you do have that resistance, think beyond that and think of the benefits for the business of you being able to leverage yourself. So if it means you've got to take one for the team and be seen as a thought leader in order to leverage the business, then go ahead and do it for that reason alone.
Yeah, and what the other thing people don't realise is that they do have a unique perspective. They are, if they've got the practical expertise, they've got that in there, and so they need to embrace that rather than trying to deny it. I've been guilty of that. I know certain people who I won't mention have been guilty of that. And I think it's something that it is hard. It's because it's human nature for us. We're in our bubble. We're in our bubble of life, and we see everything, and we don't think what we do is special more often than not. And I think that, we've got to realise that what we do is special.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brett. I think that's given the listeners and viewers some really good information about what they need to do to leverage and why that's important. So thank you for that. I like, with all my guests, to talk about the future, because I think there's a lot of buzzwords, disruption, all the rest of it in industries, in all industries. And I like to ask people, what do you see as the biggest challenge in the next 5 years, say, in what you do?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a challenge so much. I would say more opportunities. Like there's so much, AI is the buzzword at the moment, and there's a lot of fear around it. But I think the opportunities, certainly in our field, is the personalisation of content.
Yep.
And it's something that we can already do. So, for example, everyone's familiar with Facebook, the way in which they customise their advertising based on your behaviour.
Yep.
The next evolution of that is customizing the content on your website so that it is based on the behavior of people before they got there.
Yep.
We're able to do that to a degree. We use Ontraport as our kind of customer relationship management system.
Yep.
Excuse me. And they've recently added some parts to their system where you can show and hide content based on whether someone has previously visited a page, whether they're a member of this part of your business or something else. So that's something that's really going to ramp up, and I think it's going to become technically it's going to become easier to do, but also from a creative point of view, you're going to have to be smarter about how you put your content together.
Yep.
Now, for example, I mentioned earlier, if you were to write an article about conveyancing, conveyancing for a small beach house, I don't know whether there are different rules for that, and as there might be to conveyancing for a strata title home in the city. I've got no idea whether there are differences, but all of those sorts of things, there's going to be intelligence going on in the background that will predetermine who's sitting in front of your screen, basically, and then you kind of have to have your content ready for those people. So that's, I'm not going to get too bogged down on how that's done. I'm going to find people who can do all that sort of stuff for me. But at the end of the day, content marketing and authority marketing, I think that's pretty solid. People always have an interest in knowledge and information. So, that's not going to go away for a long time.
Cool. Great. All right. What about for yourself personally? What's next on the horizon for you?
Well, so we've just launched and this is an adjunct to So we've got Help Me Leverage, which is our the overarching business. We have a podcast network called Experts on Air,
Yep.
and that's where we publish all our podcasts, broadcast them. And we've just opened a podcast booking agency as part of Experts on Air as well. So if people want to be a guest on other people's podcasts, so Jeremy's podcast, for example, we would act as their agent to get them booked on that. So I've just started that as a partnership.
Yep.
So that's the main thing. And we're also about to launch training programs where we teach people to do what we're actually doing.
Okay.
For a lot of people, it's out of their reach to have us do it for them, but we still want them to be able to do it. So within the next month, we're going to have a beta program up where we'll show them the exact systems that we use so they can do it themselves if that's what they want to do.
Yep, great. All right. Well, I warned you before the beginning of before we started recording that I had a question that I'd been asked to ask you by a mutual colleague of ours, Kathy Love, who has I've been on her podcast before, and I'll be probably having her on sometime soon or here. But she wanted me to ask you about meditation and how important you think meditation is, and I think she used the word transcendental meditation. Is that
Yep. So whether you do transcendental meditation or not is really a matter of personal choice. I've been doing it for almost, I would say, probably 28 years by now.
Wow.
I do it almost every day, usually at least once a day, often twice a day. I cannot imagine life without some form of meditation. It's my reset point. It's why I gravitated towards transcendental meditation is they talk about there being a gap between your thoughts. Any thought that arises, it's not sitting there in the brain. It just comes from somewhere. It comes from what they call a unified field. And so with transcendental meditation, it's all about trying to increase that gap and having moments where you are in that gap and there's nothing happening.
Yep.
And it's such a blissful place to be. You don't always get there every time you meditate, but you can imagine how restful that is for the body, how restful it is for the mind. And so, whether you choose TM or some other form of meditation, you got to be doing something. And more recently, and I think you've been doing a little bit of it as well, it was about a year ago, I came across some advanced breathing techniques, which our colleagues Shane and Angelina Saunders do.
Yes.
That to me is an active form of meditation. And again, just so powerful, so incredibly powerful. So I know a lot of people are resistant to meditation because they think, I can't do it. My mind's too busy. I've got a monkey mind. Just the process of sitting down and having an intention to meditate, that's enough. That actually is a form of meditation. So I encourage people to get a professional teacher to show you how to do it. But if not, there's a ton of resources on YouTube, wherever. Just meditate.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Kathy, for your suggestion. All right. So I always put my guests through a quick fire question round. So if you just give me the first answer, doesn't need to be a long answer. So the first one is, how did you make your first dollar?
My first dollar. $1 was a lot of money when I was a kid, and but my guess is it would have been probably with my brothers and my sister. We decided we were going to make some perfume. We had this beautiful jasmine hedge. So we cut the jasmine, we made some perfume, and we stood out the front of our house, had it in jars. Whether we sold something or not, I'm not entirely sure. But if we would have got somewhere between 2 cents and 5 cents for it.
That's good enough. I meant first bit of money that you earned. First dollar, just the way that I phrase it. So what about I love reading. I believe you do too. What do you think is a book that every business owner should read?
It's an unusual one, but it's my go-to book recommendation for anyone. It's called Autobiography of a Yogi. It's by Paramahansa Yogananda. It's got nothing to do with business whatsoever. It's got everything to do with life being more than just this sort of three-dimensional thing that we see in front of us. The book opened my eyes to more about what the universe is. It's not a religious text as such, but it's it opened my spiritual eyes, so to speak.
Okay.
As a business person, I don't think you could ever have too much of that.
Cool. Great answer. That's the most obscure non-business one that we've had so far. So that's
Okay.
and I love those kind of books because there's so much more to life than just business. So I think that's great. The third question is, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would that advice be?
I would go back to what I said earlier about find who instead of how.
Yep.
Like, you're familiar with Roger Hamilton's wealth dynamics profiles. I'm a mechanic, so it's easy for me to get obsessive with how things work and to want to experiment and pull things apart and do them myself.
Yep.
It served me well, but it's also held me back in so many areas.
Yep.
If I'd let that go and allowed myself to delegate more and to partner more with other people,
Yep.
I think I'd be in a very different position to where I am in now.
Yeah. I'm creator, so I'm part part star. So yeah.
Right. We're right next to each other.
We are indeed. All right. Well, Brett, thank you so much for your time today. I think that our listeners and viewers would have got a lot out of what we've talked about, and the practical stuff's been really great. But is there anything that you want to get over to our listeners and viewers that we've missed that you think is important?
Nothing off the top. I think the most important thing I've said is this bit about who instead of how, and I'll just go back to that thing about imposter syndrome. Don't be afraid to, like, I'm an extreme introvert.
Yep.
My wife is an extreme extrovert. She's an expert on these things. She's an MBTI consultant. So we talk about introversion, extroversion a lot. And I know I'm at the absolute far end of the spectrum.
Yep.
So it's taken me a lot to put myself in a position where even to do an interview like this, like if you'd asked me 5 or 10 years, no, probably 10 years ago, I would have thought, look, I'm just not that interesting enough.
Yep.
But it's, so I would encourage people to go out there, take more risks, and to leverage your own intellectual property to its fullest. Don't be afraid of judgments that other people might make, or that you don't know enough, or you don't know as much as someone else. That's always going to be the case. But 99.9% of us, we've all got something of value to share.
Yep.
And we've got this great landscape now that we can do this. You don't have to be famous in order to have platforms like podcasts and blogs and all those sorts of things.
That's right. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, excellent. Well, finally, where can people reach you if they want to discuss anything about the interview today?
Yeah, well, I could give them my PayPal account, and they're welcome to send money. That always gets my attention.
We'll link that in the show notes.
But failing that, they're welcome to email me at brett@helpmeleverage.com, or connecting with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. There's probably a handful of Brett Jarmans. I'm the one that looks like George Clooney with no hair, so pretty easy to find on there. Either of those channels are fine by me.
Excellent. Well, Brett, thank you so much for your time, and we'll speak soon.
Hey, thanks for the invitation, Jeremy. I enjoyed it.
Not a problem.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Brett Jarman. I'm sure you'll agree with me that he's a really interesting gentleman with a lot of great information to share. As I said in the intro, the three main things that I got out of the interview was his definition of leverage and how you can actually use that. I really liked his practical tips about how you could actually go away today and leverage your business. And don't forget to download the worksheet. If you go to businesslegallifecycle.com.au/152 for our 150-second show, you can get a copy of the worksheet from there. And also, I really enjoyed Brett's view on the future and where he saw the future trends of business going in general. So, Craig, that was a really fun interview with Brett Jarman.
Absolutely, and we thank Brett for coming on the show, and all of our other interviewees that have come on the show. We know that they're giving up their time and sharing their vast amount of knowledge, so we thank everyone for that. We'll be back on Monday. This is show number 152. We'll be back on Monday for Fast Fix Monday, where we're talking more about expanding your business and specifically about buying a business. So please join us then. Please remember to subscribe on our YouTube or on wherever you're getting the podcast. Tell your friends about it, or your colleagues if you're getting great value from it. And if you've got any questions, as Jeremy said, please get in touch with us, and we'll be either happy to pass it on to Brett, or any other questions about the life cycle. We should be able to help you. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you then.